Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I'm live streaming the session now. Okay.
Yeah.
Everything is fine with Dr. Shah.
Yes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Anubha, and on behalf of the whole Will Grow team, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you for Unconvention 2021. Unconvention is Will Grow's annual convening for social entrepreneurs, and this is our 12th year conducting this event. We are extremely proud to bring to you Unconvention 2021, the theme for which is remodeling for resilience, and for the first time, it is being hosted completely online. This year, Unconvention is a 3-day convening, and the days have been divided into the sub-themes of building better, building bigger, and building meaningfully. The purpose of Unconvention is to create a space for authentic conversations and facilitate meaningful connections. Both purposes are in line with the larger goal of building resilience within social enterprises as well as the ecosystem at large. There are multiple parallel panel discussions, fireside chats, master classes, and networking lounges taking place throughout the day. And some are even rather late in the evening due to the international nature of our attendees. I now invite Dr. Shyam Vasudev Rao, founder and director, Forus Health, Renalax, and RX DHP to start with the second masterclass of the day, which is moving from hospital to home, opportunities for disruption in healthcare. Over to you, Dr. Shyam.
Thank you, Anubhava. Thank you, Will Grow, for hosting this session. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you with young minds. And the very concept, saying that in today's world, you see, when somebody is going from hospital to home, we all feel so happy, right? So why not make this as a feature? Why not make this as a concept? And that is what I'm seeing in these days. There is a big shift in the paradigm, and we are seeing a lot of things happening where the technology is going to move from a hospital centric to more of a home centric. So home means, please don't think that home is your real house or something. It can be your house if you are a rich lad, you have a lot of swam, you can have everything at home. But it is also, a more inclusive way. If you think about home, it is something closer to your home. That is what I would say. So we are working in a hub and spoke model where we are trying to bring things much closer to the patient. So a big paradigm shift, is instead of patient go to hospital, can the hospital go to the patient? That is the real concept on which we are working, and we see that this is a real disruption which is going to happen in the healthcare system of tomorrow. So can I have my slides?
Sure.
So this is so I have been in the healthcare space for the last 2 decades. I used to be heading the technology office of Philips Healthcare, and then I started my own companies in 2010. They are Forus Health, which is more into ophthalmology, eye care, and we wanted to democratize eye care for the larger section of society. So the concept of taking the eye care much closer to the home is what we did in Forus, and we have been doing that. We just that's an experiment ongoing. And the other one is that Renalex I started in 2015, where I have been working on renal care. And here, unlike doing just preventive, we are also doing the job of disease management and seeing to it that for those unlucky ones, even treatment can be moved to home. That is the wider scope what I am experimenting in Renalex. And then the other companies are more enablers. And I also do a lot of capacity building in terms of getting more and more engineers and doctors together and then we promote a doctorate degree for them. And sitting in India, I have a research center which I started with Maastricht University Medical Center, which is a Dutch university. And we have a lot of these doctors and engineers working for their PhD from here. So in that term, we are trying to see what are the Indian problems, how do we solve them, what are the new things, and get an international exposure to the work what they do. And at the end, they also get a PhD for that. So I also mentor several incubation centers and accelerators. One of them is the BMS SIME, which is Center for Innovation in Medical Electronics. I also do that for Manipal University. We have IASC, we have a incubation center there, and called SID. And I also do mentoring at Deshpande Foundation in Hubli. So if you see the next slide, roughly what I'm planning to cover in this half an hour, 45 minutes is the telemedicine, which is basically a known fact. It has been there for a long time. I would like to see how this can be put in a proper context in terms of moving care to homes. Okay. Then medical devices. The problem of telemedicine has always been that you know there are different people just using Skype and consulting. Could also mean telemedicine, but what we talk about real telemedicine is that we need to have medical devices which actually enable doing telemedicine in the right way. And we also see, today's world, we have non-communicable diseases. That is the bigger problem than communicable disease, exempting, COVID, okay? Because COVID is not a permanent syndrome, okay? So non-communicable diseases like, diabetes, hypertension, COPD, cardiovascular problems, these are something, once they set in, you need to continuously keep maintaining it. So disease management is a big, big thing. And monitoring, medication, this is a continuum. So it keeps on from chronic stage, it may get to acute stage, from acute, it may go get yourself treatment, and then you may come back to chronic, but it's a cycle. Okay, so that's where it is a continuum. And that is where, we see home care taking a very, very big advantage or step in this. And we will also see, that how this post-pandemic, what would be the opportunities in healthcare, because already we are seeing a lot of such changes happening. And these are some of the topics which I would like to discuss, and how we implement this, what platform and things like that, technologies for that. That is what will be the last thing. So if we go to the next slide. So there is a lot of talks happening about the new normal, and already, we are seeing a lot of it. So, like for example, I am sitting in a building which is next to a very big building, which was earlier a cinema theater. That was fully occupied by some software company, and today, that whole building is vacant. And I believe they have put a board also 2 months ago to let on that. That means there is a big shift happening. People are not fired or something. They are now sitting at home and doing their job. And the companies are finding it much more advantageous doing so. They don't need this huge building. They don't need to maintain it. They don't need to spend so much of money. Instead, they can give some swaps to the people working from home, and working also whatever environment they need. So a complex thing like developing some big software, or doing a lot of these health services, or even IT enabled services, when that can be done from home, why not shift healthcare also to home? That's also going to happen. So banks have already started to do that. If you see, there is a lot of banking, we don't even have to go to the bank, right? In today's world, it's all done from wherever you are. And also there is a sense of ownership when somebody says, okay, you have this task and you have to complete this task. I don't care where you work. Okay, you do it from home or you sit in the office or wherever, but I want this to be finished. So that sort of a thing. So people are now taking up more and more ownership, and they are actually in a better position to deliver. And the companies and the people, the promoters are really getting a big advantage of that. And then what we also see in the new normal is that there is a big shift, and there is a health seeking behavior has changed, because now if you see, people are talking about wearing masks. If you talk about sanitization, then there's everything, they want to be following the rules because they are scared. And going forward, I'm sure, they are not going to just as one. I was seeing some people on the road just, advising somebody that you have to wear a mask. You cannot go like this. See, it was not the police or somebody, it's the people, who are trying to tell this. And more than anything, they are also being more cautious about their general health, because, as you know, this COVID is the COVID attack is very severe for those who have these comorbidities, like immunocompromised, or they had a cancer and then a chemo. Then those are the people who are very highly affected. And then there are people with transplants, particularly kidney transplants. The rate of death has gone up by 5 times, during the COVID, this one, because of infection. Likewise, there are a lot of these people with diabetes or controlled diabetes or hypertension, and more so the COPD people are the ones which are greatly affected. So now people have started to think, now I have to go preventive. I have to be a little, I have to prevent myself from not getting from a chronic stage to an acute stage. I have to prevent myself from not getting into, first of all, these non-communicable diseases. So this sort of behavioral change is what is happening. And this is a good thing. This is the right opportunity, I would say, because we have this home care, telemedicine, and all that for a long time. We have been talking about it for a long time. And some of us who were the early one in this 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, when we were talking about this, nobody wanted to take this. Now, if you see, there is a huge change in the behavior, and people are now seeing the advantage of these things. So this is the time to now catch up and see how we can shift this to homes. So if you go to the next slide, see, the healthcare is a very, very vast subject, and also healthcare is for everybody. As the name says, healthcare. Okay, it is one who cares for your own health. That is the thing. So this is not just, at the end stage. If you see the way any disease progresses, right from, or even before the baby is born, already, it has a genetic predisposition to certain risk factors. Like, people say, well, if you're one of your parent had a cardiac arrest and it was fatal, then the chances of you getting cardiac problem is very high. Likewise, diabetes, hypertension, it get passed on from generation to generation. So like that, there are several diseases. It is totally not in your one's control. And then what happens, the risk factor. It doesn't mean to say that they are born with cardiac problem or any other thing, but they are at a risk. And this risk can become high or low depending on the environment, depending on the lifestyle, how you progress. So what happens after the birth is that the person is getting exposed to the environment, and once we are exposed to the environment, it's all type of environment. If you have more oxygen, you have a problem, hypoxia, and if you have less oxygen, you have problem. If you are having more dust, you have a problem. You have more sunlight, you have a problem. No sunlight, also you have a problem. See, there are so many factors which is totally not in our control. So invariably, a large number of them, maybe around 19% of the population today, are subjected to one or the other type of non-communicable disease. And this non-communicable disease, as I said, diabetes, hypertension, COPD, or any of these, they progress in a big way. First, you may have a first cell mutation. Even cancer is a non-communicable disease, by the way, nowadays, as per WHO. So there will be a first cell mutation which happens. That is very, very difficult for somebody to know. It's a very early stage. And then, it gets into an asymptomatic disease stage where, there is the mutated cells, and then, a cluster of them, or the bloodstream, these cells are moving around, but still the person is not in a position to get any sort of a sense that they are in a pre-diabetic stage or in a pre-cardiovascular stage or whatever, okay? But because they don't have any symptoms. This is a very hidden problem, okay? So there are a lot of such problems. I work with ophthalmology and nephrology. In ophthalmology, we have something called glaucoma. It's asymptomatic, it will be just not possible to detect at early stage. So that's the thing. Then, you have disease cells releasing biomarkers. So this is the stage when, already the disease in the third or fourth stage. So they start releasing some biomarkers. So by blood test or urine test or all that, this could be detected. Then after this stage, the first symptoms will start showing up. That is when a person will start getting some sort of a feeling that, oh my God, there is some problem with me. So I have to go to a doctor. So that is the stage, a lot of people will get to know that they want to go, but the severity is not so high, so that they are not motivated, or they were not motivated, or they are unaware of these facts. So they may think that, oh, I had some food which is allergic, so because of that I may be having this. They always want to hide behind some of these things. Nobody want to go and get a bad news that you have a disease, you have a cancer, or you have you are diabetic or something like that, right? So they were pulling themselves away. But then after some stage, it may start proliferating, and that is the stage when people rush to the hospital, and then it's already, the doctor says, wow, you have come at the right time, but it is already too late. So we have to do this, we have to do that, and all that. So that is the thing. So all our healthcare, has been focusing on this end stage. Okay. So it is not a health care, I would say, it is a sick care. Okay. Now, at this stage, what are the problems? One is the cost. The other is the risk of mortality is very, very high. That's what you see in the second one. And then what is the present approach? Okay, at this stage, you put them on diagnosis, you do MRI, CT scan, whatever. Take some biopsy if it is a cancer or something, and then, you see whether the symptoms are, and then, you do that. There is a different types of treatment, what is done. And after treatment, again, they have to go to a follow-up, and this is a continuous cycle in that loop. Okay, so that is the thing. So this is the current one. But now what you can also see is that there is a little bit of moving towards a little early stage. Okay, that is when disease cells start releasing the biomarker. So in general, if you hit the next button, please. Yeah. So there is also technology which has improved a lot, and we can actually do molecular imaging and molecular therapy, which, we can actually do it at an early stage itself, and try to solve the problem in a little early stage, not getting to the end stage. This is very, very good. That is the thing. And then there is also possibilities of now screening at a much early stage. Even when the first cell mutation starts, you do some protein screening, DNA screening, all that. Even if before the baby is born, we can do DNA screening and see what are Down syndrome, and so many other things can be detected. But of course, there are legal issues as you go much earlier. Okay, so these are the things, and it is all, every country has its own limitation on that. So protein screening, yes, that's a thing which is getting more and more popular. Okay, so what are we trying to do? If you hit the next button. So we are trying to detect problem at an early stage, number one. we are trying to do personalized medicine, because if a person has a problem, see, when the disease has spread to the whole body, you may have to do something which is given to the entire body. But if you are detecting at the early stage, it may be a problem which is only concerning a part of a liver or a part of a kidney or part of something. Then, you can actually do a personalized treatment only for that. That is one way of looking at it. Image guided therapies and all that are coming in place. On the other hand, there is also a drug resistance for every individual. So each of us have our own resistance towards certain drugs, and our own immune system is different. So for that, there are certain machine learning and a lot of machine intelligence which can be used to make it personalized treatment. And also, integrating screening and treatment, is a big thing. And you can see that that's always the case. So an integrated approach is taken. So that is another thing. So what I was trying to tell you, which is healthcare is a continuum. So for that, an integrated approach is the most efficient. So these are some of the paradigms which you see. And as you see this, if it is a hospital at the end stage, if you see, if it is a hospital, there is a clear place. Okay, this is where you will go. This is where all the facilities will be made available, and all the medical equipment or treatment, everything is focused towards that. And that's how the whole technology science has developed in healthcare. But as you start going a little early stages, you may find that there is no equipment for that. You want to screen something in early stage? Well, there was no equipment. I will give you some examples later. So that is where you see, as you are trying to go much more closer to the early stages, we need something which is much closer to an individual, that is home, or you're closer to your home. Okay. So that is why, from a technology point of view, I would say that if at all you want to make the early detection and continuous care as the way to go, then home care becomes very important. And responsibility also, if it is at the end stage, it is more or less, it is the doctor, it is the healthcare system which is going to take care. But if it is in the early stages, it is the individual who has to take care. Okay. And we also need a little bit of education on that, and we need the competence. Okay. Or we need somebody to assist that. So that way, it is really a big shift in all respect. You go to the next stage, next slide. Yeah. So this is how, no, back. So now if you see, the other paradigm is, if you are shifting more closer to the early stages, more number of people, have to be screened. Almost every baby before it is born, you will have to check. That is the thing, right? In India alone, 270 lakh babies are born every year. And all 270 pregnant women have to be tested for DNA screening. So it's a huge expense. And then if you go on like that, the next stages, you see that there is a large number of people who need to be screened. So the cost involved is very high. At the same time, psychologically, you are putting a pressure on an individual. By just telling somebody that, oh, you have a very high risk of getting cancer, then that person would end up, getting cancer in a few months, for example. Because see, mind is very important, and that is why we should not disturb that. And that is why what is more important, or what we see as the most optimal way, both from a cost, time, and psychology and all that, is that this stage, that is what I have marked there, that is an asymptomatic disease stage, or when the disease starts releasing the biomarker. Okay. So you cannot exactly target this, because it all depends on so many factors. So around this is the best stage. If you see at that stage, the population also to be screened is less, because they are the only ones who would have a very high risk of that, and also the cost will have to be low. Okay. So please go to the next slide. So I was also talking to you about the mind. psychology of the person. And what I'm saying is that uh, if you are talking about somebody having a problem, a disease, and diagnosed, that is one aspect. There is no other way. They have to know it, and they will be, have to go through treatment. But if you are looking at people at an early stage, how would somebody take that? That is very important. So it all depends on how strong your mind is, and how aware a person is. So that is, awareness is a very, very important aspect. So what I have here is a very interesting concept, the age. Okay. Age is one factor, you can actually, except in very worst case, there is more or less, age, average age of a Indian today has gone up by, up to 68 years or something like that. In the maybe 20 years ago, it was around 55 or something. And if you see now, now if they do a census, maybe it will be much more than that. Maybe 74 years or 75 years may be an average age. Okay, age is one factor, whether the person had a disease or no disease, and if they have managed it well, everybody end up at the same age. Okay, they'll die at that age. Okay, so, but what is important is the quality of life, and that's what you see. Lifestyle. If you have a better lifestyle, if you have a good lifestyle, your quality of life will go up. If you have a bad lifestyle, your quality of life will come down. Okay, and that is the thing which is important. So there are two important terms what I am trying to introduce here. One is called as an accommodation, and the other one is called as compensation. Okay, so you just see, if you have a fight with somebody, what do? Okay, not that you are wrestling or something, some any sort of fight. In between husband and wife also, there'll be fight. What will happen? They will leave, both of them will try to keep on arguing, and they will keep on accommodating each other's this one. And after some time, what will happen? One of the party, will give up and start to compensate. Okay, fine, that's okay. They start sobbing. Okay, and it will back to normal. Okay, very similar to that is our health. So some people, they realize that they have a problem. There is a very early stage of diabetes. They start to take medicine. And then, once you're taking medicine, mind you, your diabetes may come back to some control, but there is a lot of side effect. Okay. So that you are going to compensate a lot on the side effects. Okay. So you accommodate that for some time. After that, you start taking medicines, and then, you start to go down. You may not get into an acute stage, but you are going to have some side effects and all that. Then if there are people, who adopt another method, they say, okay, let me not take medication. I will do exercise. I will do yoga. I will do that, this and all that, jogging, all that. Then you can try to push this accommodation for some more time. And then after that, you will have to take some medicine because you are scared that this may become an acute stage. So you can accommodate till that stage, and then again it starts compensating. But then there is another is one that you do much more. You do medication, or you have a strong willpower, and want to push this to a stage till you are not compensating. Then there are people, without even anything, by doing a lot of exercise or whatever, and pranayams or whatever, yogas or whatever, the meditation, mindfulness, all that sort of things, what we see in today's world, all wellness things, they are in a position to push this to a much more larger stage. So what you see from this quality of life, your quality of life depends on how you can accommodate and get to the one. So that is the thing. So that's what I say, that it is a wellness and illness hypothesis. Okay, there is in preventive care, there is nothing like sick or nothing like perfect health. It is a accommodation and compensation which plays between the wellness and illness. So this is the hypothesis on which we are working on the home care. Go to the next slide, please. So now you see, with all these background, let us now revisit a hospital. Okay. multi-speciality hospital or whatever, a sort of a district hospital, or it could be a tertiary care hospital. So what you see is that in a hospital, there are these 4 different departments, okay? So you have the inpatient and ICU and OTs and all that. And then, you have outpatient department and treatment rehabilitation. So patient will come to the hospital, first register in the outpatient, and then a lot of things, the consultation and all is done at the outpatient itself. And if there is a repeat patient, and then, they just consult and then go away, right? Then so some people who may need some treatment for which, they will be admitted in the hospital, they become inpatients, and then, they may do some procedures on them, and then they will maybe get to the ICU for the procedure and then get out. And after that, they will be going to the treatment rehab, and they'll be taught how to manage at home. So after that, they go home. So in this 4 departments, what you see is there is a high cost, low volume zone. That is the inpatient and there is a low cost, high volume zone. Okay. So if you see this, the hospital and for the patient, if you are going to this hospital, then the hospital is built for all the patients, right? And it has to focus on the high cost the part, because that is the thing where there is a need for a lot of care, but not that the others should not be fun. With the technology what we have today, the ICT, telemedicine, and all that, we can think of moving out the low cost, high volumes closer to the patient. What we are talking about home health care is not that, entire hospital is going to their home or something. We are talking about the home. That is what I have done in this picture. You can see, outpatient department is now going to camps, kiosks, health kiosks, all that. And the treatment, rehabilitation like dialysis and all that, is trying to go to the homes. Now chemotherapy is shifted to homes. A lot of things, now after COVID and during COVID time, a lot of things are getting shifted to homes, okay? So that is the thing. So this is a very, very important and interesting thing. And this is how you balance the cost of healthcare for both the government or the one who runs it, at the same time, to the patient also, and really make this a real affordable and accessible care. So if you go to the next slide, please. And as I was telling you, healthcare is a continuum. It is not like one-time fix, okay? Even if you take your cars or your automobile, you see, continuously you have to keep going to the garage to get it maintenance, right? For preventive maintenance. Otherwise, the car company will call you and say, sir, your service is due. Why don't you, when you want to send the car for servicing, right? Just imagine, for that dumb car, we have all these. For human beings, we don't have. Okay. So what we want to see is how we bring this to human lives also. And for that, what is needed? You have to have a method of reaching the patient, okay, through this screening, de-skilling, training, all these things. These are so many things, methods which we need to reach out to the patients. And all these are a big opportunity, I would say. Then you connect the patient with the right information and access, contact. Okay. So that is the connect part of it. That is where telemedicine will come, telemonitoring will come in, all these UIDs, Aadhaar, or whatever, GIS information integration, then collaboration tools, like you can have a group of people, on a WhatsApp who are having a very similar type of a disease. So they are very comfortable talking to the others who have a similar sort of a problem, health problem. So there are a lot of things happening around that. There are Facebook pages also there. There's a lot of things happening in this space. So that is the connect. So connect means it is not just a Skype connection, okay? It's a lot of things which is needed to connect, okay? Then treat. Treatment today is all concentrated in tier 1, tier 2 cities and in all big hospitals, right? And imagine 70% of India is still, in the rural rural this one. So how can we reach out to those people with the right type of treatment at the right time? Because and at the right cost. So there is a lot of things happening out here, even in this space. And then sustainability. We need to sustain this thanks to the Ayushman Bharat and PM Care and all these. It's basically, created a huge insurance scheme or a health assurance scheme, I would say. It's not a health assurance scheme called Ayushman Bharat. 500 million population is covered under that. And so likewise, there are many more things. People who are in the working one, they are having health insurance schemes, group health insurance schemes. Today, we also have insurance products which can take care of a particular ailment, like only cardiac problems, only ophthalmic problem, only kidney problem, and all that. So that's the thing. So that's how there is a huge opportunity, and we need all these to basically keep the continuum going. So we go to the next slide, please. Now we'll try to run faster because you have got the concept. Now it is a method of how we implement certain things. Approach, and for which we see the sort of a platform, I would say, is a device which is more like a mobile phone, or a mobile phone itself with some sort of a connectivity, some sort of a device integration that becomes the heart of the whole system. And that is something which somebody could have. It's a nomadic system, so anybody can have this anywhere and they can access their healthcare. Okay, and they get continuously, you can push information to them, or disease management part, reminders, alerts, all that. And that is something, which becomes vital, an important part of the healthcare system, the way as we go forward. Then that type of a device should have connectivity, obviously. It has to have a very good user interface, because this HMI is a very important aspect, human machine interface. So we spend a lot of time on this because people have to know, they are laymen, interacting with the system, but then there shouldn't be any errors and all that. And device has to be very robust. It should work in any sort of environment, a low resource setting and no resource setting, like connectivity may not be there. So online, offline mode of operation, so many things, have to be thought of in such a thing. On top of that, we build apps. Today you see so many apps coming out. Okay, so these are mobile apps which are cloud enabled predominantly, and with social media integration, machine to machine communication, or you can say IoMT or IoT, all that. Okay, that is the thing. And then on top of that, we have a large integrators. Like you have integrators for automobile, you have integrators for taxi service, you have integrators for hotels. All these, right? The same concept we are seeing now coming into healthcare also. That is a service layer which comes on top. And there, you do a lot of data analytics, machine learning, large data management, and application support. So that's the thing. This is the three-tier architecture of today. Go to the next slide, please. So these are type of platforms. So you have a data platform, which would be some sort of a cloud service, and that has integration to all these sort of different data. Machine learning and e-learning becomes very important on top of that. And then you have a whole workflow management, because healthcare now has got distributed. The moment it is distributed, you need a very robust workflow. And that is what you see, that could be another component which is very important. And then you have applications which are dedicated. You have cardiology applications, we have retinopathy of prematurity. These are some of the things which we have. Nephrology applications for chronic kidney disease management. So these are the things which this is a type of platform. What you see, in home healthcare. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so multi-parameter monitors. Already today you are seeing people, with SpO2 and body temperature sensor, and they have been monitored. So for home quarantine, right? So this is not new. This was there already for cardiology, and for pre-treatment and also post cardiac care. We had this sort of mechanisms, while we could put these apparatus, and they get connected on IoT to to the network, and then there is remote dashboards and diagnostic systems which actually remotely monitors the patient, and in case of emergency they will be reached with the right resources. So that way, this is at least 10 15 years old scheme, and there are companies which are specialized in these sort of things. So what we have seen is that the patient recovery time is much faster when they are at home. Okay, so that is the advantage, and cost is much lower. If they were in a step down ICU monitored for 30 days after post cardiac treatment yeah, or procedure, it was very very expensive. Okay, but if they are at home, and then there is mechanisms to monitor them remotely, and threshold alarms and all are set in, then it is much cheaper. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, then these are things which are basically some of the facts related to non-communicable disease like diabetes mellitus, and UPC is a huge problem. If you are not in a position to know at what stage my diabetes is, or whatever medication I am taking, is it adequate? Am I in a position to can I afford to be lazy or something? Okay, or am I not doing adequate exercise? All that. For that, if you don't have a way of knowing it, then you can end up with these sort of problems, losing your eyesight, or losing your foot, or you lose your kidney, and all these. So this is a thing just to sensitize the fact that 80% of these problems could have been avoided. Means losing your kidneys, or eyesight, or cardiac problems, if you could have detected at an early stage. So what this means is that preventive care needs health-seeking behavior, and individual has to take the responsibility and keep managing them, monitoring themselves. Okay, they get this data, and once in a month they check, or whatever as per the general physician, the doctor's advice. And there are platforms like what I showed you, on which it will automatically get logged, and it creates a whole trending report, that this, by which an individual also can get to know how I'm doing on my healthcare. That's the thing. That's the thing. And more than anything, that somebody should not take it too much son also to themselves, because these are all problems you can't avoid. As I was telling you, even before you are born itself, there are certain risk factors which come with you. It's your ancestral property, and nothing can be done. If somebody takes it too much into their head, then that would become a big issue, and they start developing stress, and stress is the bigger enemy. Okay, diabetes or hypertension may not kill them, but the stress will actually kill them. Okay, so that is the thing. So that is why stress management is also very important. So why I'm trying to bring this is that this is the balance, the accommodation and compensation balance, which has to be developed. So when we are in the next phase of promoting wellness, promoting home care, we need to also take this into one, and see that the applications are developed in such a way that you don't end up making the person sick mentally. Okay, so that's the thing. So please go to the next slide, please. Yeah, this I try to apply to kidney care in one of my son, and what we see is that before somebody loses their kidney, there is 10 to 15 years before itself, they start to get a problem called as chronic kidney disease. And this chronic kidney disease goes over several phases, like what I was telling you about the disease, how they progress. Same thing here, stage 1 to 5. And when they are in stage 5, it becomes symptomatic, and only then they get to know, oh, I have a problem, go to the hospital. They say, well, both your kidneys have failed, and now you have to go through a dialysis, or you have to get a transplant. So can we not do early detection? If we can do early detection, you could have solved the problem, or you could have helped them to prolong the failure. Okay, so you could arrest the failure, that sort of a thing. That's what it means. So what we need for that is accessibility, and then, you know, you need awareness and also affordability. So as the disease goes to the later stages, affordability becomes less and less because it becomes very expensive. If it is early, it is very easy to manage. Go to the next slide, please.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Sham. So in the interest of time,
Yeah,
we have 15 minutes left, and
yeah,
we have also received a couple of very
yeah,
interesting questions from the audience. So
perfect.
we would like to move to the Q&A.
Yeah, so I would say that just one, two slide, one slide. Yeah. So
Sure.
this is the realization of the same fact what I was telling you for specifically for kidney. You see, early detection stage one, and then it starts progressing, and then, you know, at the end stage, you need a treatment, and that's what you can see here. How we have actually made this. This is a real on the ground thing that what we do at Renalex, and I wanted to show you how the solution is derived. Okay, so you have screening tool. All those who are diabetic or hypertensive are at a risk of getting chronic kidney disease. So for them, you know, we have a screening. Then we have early detection through a mobile app, and then there is a clinical diagnosis. They will be sent to the lab if they are found to have the problem in stage 3 or 4, so that they get the entire checkup, and then the doctor will be consulted through telemedicine, and then they are given an app called disease management app, which will help them to manage the disease in early stage. So that's how, you know, it goes on. Out of these, some of them will end up at the end stage, and for them, you have a different mechanism. You have a dialysis machine, which actually can be put in a low resource setting, like home or PHCs, so that there is a remote monitoring facility in this, and also it uses very low water. You know, we need regularly 140 liters of RO water. In this case, you know, you need less than 20 liters of RO. So that sort of a mechanism we have, and technologies through which, you know, we have made a smart dialysis machine. Anyway, so this is how, you know, we have tried to realize whatever I've been telling. Early detection, you can do a screening with just 100 rupees. But when you go, if somebody ends up at the end stage, they need a treatment, and a dialysis session costs you somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000 rupees a session. And every alternate day, they have to get this 4 hours of treatment. So you see the quality of life, everything, how it goes down if we are not in a position to do early detection. Okay. So with that, I would like to stop and go to the questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So there are a couple of questions, really interesting questions that the audience has actually shared with us.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll just read out the first one. In the meantime, I'm going to also send you the others. So the first question is, it appears that the perfect solution is to constantly do regular testing, but that goes against our ingrained behavior of not testing when there is no issue. So should the first disruption be driving awareness?
Exactly. You really have the question and the right answer also. We have to drive awareness. Awareness is very important. People are not aware. Lot of them, even, you know, when I was doing this, see, there are so many companies in the world, you know, who actually work in renal care, kidney care, and all of them, you know, do only the dialysis part. But we are the only company in the world who are trying to do early detection and disease management. And how do we promote early detection? We have to do a lot of awareness sessions and start to tell people what they have to do. And that is very important. And you have seen that now in the COVID time, right? Earlier, nobody wanted to go for a test, COVID test. Now you see people are volunteering to go for a test, and they want to see that they don't end up, you know, having severe infections. So awareness is a very, very important aspect. Hope I answered the question.
So the next question is, in the case of home-based healthcare options, like a practo consultation, the avenues for follow-up are limited. There is often a time lag because of if a blood test or an X-ray is prescribed, it is up to the patient to then take it up.
That is what I was telling, that this needs a special design. It is not that just that, okay, I will give you a consultation thing with the doctor, I connect you, and then, it is left to the patient and the doctor. What we need is creating a sort of a continuum. And that continuum is very important. And there should be ways of basically standardizing the continuum. We are working with the labs, we are working with lab and analytics, actually, one of the organization, in seeing how we can standardize EMR for them. We are working with public healthcare system to see how hub and spoke model can be built. And likewise, hospitals also, every hospital have their own EMR system. Instead, if you have standard, which is already there, it is already, it's an open sources one, and there are open EMRs and all that available. If that is one aspect of it, but then it can interact on open this one to the pharma, it can interact to the diagnostic labs, it can interact with the patient and every hospital system, so that there is a continuum which we maintain. And to get to that stage, we are still evolving. Okay. And once we have that, I'm sure, it doesn't make any difference for a person whether they are getting their healthcare done at home or at office or at hospital. It will actually, most of the time, it is the chronic care which is important, and that doesn't need a sort of an intervention by the hospital. It will need advice. It needs proper tracking, and that is what will become more important. So if people start seeing the benefit of that it is giving them everything, in a much more controlled way, and they themselves are involved in the whole thing, then I'm sure they will not skip this one, and they will start become compliant to this system. It's still a long way, but I think the journey is getting accelerated.
So the next question and the last one for today's session would be, cost of specialized treatments like dialysis goes up by 2 to 4x while shifting to home. So are we ignoring the economies of scale that hospitals are able to achieve?
See, this is, as I was telling you, home means not always inside your house. Okay. It is something which is closer to your home. It could be a nursing home. Okay. Today, you see, a lot of nursing homes are there. All nursing homes are closer to your locality. Any locality you take, there's nursing home. But then not all nursing homes are dialysis, right? Through technology, if I can shift this to if I can set up small dialysis center with 2 or 3 beds, or in apartments where there are 500, 1,000 houses, if there will be definitely 1 or 2 patients will be going for dialysis if we can set up a small little one there, and that has remote monitoring and cloud enabled services and all the telenephrology as what we do, then it is not going to become expensive. Okay, because there are 2 parts of the dialysis. One is the direct cost and the other one is the indirect cost. The indirect cost is much more than the direct cost, actually, if they have to go to the institution. So if they have the facility close to their homes or at inside their house, that indirect cost will get totally, will become low or zero, and then they can get this facility. And it is not always that, when you go take something to the home, it is going to be expensive. It is, we have to use technologies, we have to build reliable systems, we have to build confidence in the people that, in the patients, that you can get it done at home. And then, you know, you will see that the cost will also come down. And that is what we are actually seeing. And we are actually trying to do that. Okay. So I see that it is but then there are people who can afford to have a dialysis machine in their home itself. So by paying, you know, if we make a affordable dialysis machine, which is at least 40, 50% less than the regular ones, imported ones, then they can rather buy that and put it at their home and can get dialysis at home. Okay. Like Ola, Uber, you know, they can have technicians, you know, going around the place. They can fix up a technician and that fellow will come at the right time and do the cannulation and sit there till the dial is over, and then, you know, clean the machine, rinse it and close it and go. So that sort of facility will also become affordable, right? So like you just imagine the Zomatos or Swiggies and all these guys, if you had thought of, oh, home delivery in the early days, it used to be double or triple delivery cost, all that would be there. But now you see, you are getting almost at the same price as what it is, you know, in a hotel, right? So the same paradigm will come to this also as the volume builds up. And the system is made easy to use.
Going dangerously close.
A big thank you, Dr. Shyam, for sharing your expertise with us. It was a delight to be a part of the session, and we are truly fortunate to have had the opportunity to be able to learn from the wealth of your experience. Thank you. So coming up next, I would request everyone to head over to our networking lounges to meet with Venkatesh of NSDC and Pushpa from Sequoia. After lunch, we will be having 2 sessions around building a climate resilient agricultural economy and catalyzing rural micro entrepreneurship. You can also meet Siddharth Gogoi of Tata Trust and Raja Ganapati of Mercedes-Benz R&D in the networking lounges. A very thank you once again to everyone who joined us for this session today, and see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.